1. MLS Aces Podcast. We are back, episode 321. Jason Vevang. I mean, it has been a week. It's been a fun week, right? It's such a fun week for us.
There's been a lot of news. There's been a lot of other stuff going on. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up at this point. So.
That's it. That's all we can do is try to keep up. We've said it before. This is not our 9 to 5. This is our spare thing. In saying that, obviously, no 2 episodes this week, no interview on Monday. Apologies, my fault. Again, 9 to 5 getting in the way of all of that. But we are appreciative still of the people helping us try to achieve the goals on the subscribers, reviews, all of that. We hit the YouTube subscriber goal we wanted to hit before the start of the MLS season last week, so that's big. And I mean, still, if you want to subscribe on YouTube, we'll take more.
Yeah, don't stop now. We just up the number.
We are 3 away for our Spotify subscribe review goal, and then we're 4 away on Apple. So if you're listening to the podcast, if you prefer the podcast over the YouTube, please subscribe, review, all that fun stuff there. And then obviously, if you're watching on YouTube or whatever, keep doing the subscribe thing there. I'm going to stop begging people for subscriptions and let's talk about soccer, Jason, because it's been what I thought we would kind of get into the slight slowdown of things as the season approaches. It's been the quite opposite. And we've seen competition announcement. We've seen cash for player trades. We've seen record signings, record departures, and all of that. So I think let's just start.
This week was like every day I felt like I was like, what?
Every day was
absolutely shocking moves. In the good ways and bad ways, depending on who you root for, I guess. But
I think that's fair, right? I think that's fair. But I think before we get to the moves, I just want to mention the Leagues Cup stuff because we talked about, obviously, how to qualify for all these competitions last week with how MLS and U.S. Soccer announced that. But they did drop the Leagues Cup format for 2025, and what I'm going to assume is for at least 2026 as well. But it is going to be from July 29th to August 31st. It's going to still have 3 CONCACAF Champion Cup spots on the line, first place, second place, and then the winner of the third place match. There's going to be 36 clubs in total, 18 from MLS, 18 from Liga MX. There's going to be a first round that each club is going to play 3 games in total. It's all going to be MLS versus Liga MX. There's no inter-league matchups at this point. Then, which is really weird, you're playing against the other league, but then you're in a table of your own league. So in a MLS table and a Liga MX table, the top 4 clubs finishing point-wise in those are going to advance to a single elimination tournament at that point. So the quarterfinals is going to have the 1 seed in MLS play the 4 seed in Liga MX, the 2 seed in MLS play the 3 seed in Liga MX, and then obviously the flip, right? MLS 3, Liga MX 2, MLS 4, first Liga MX 1. That's going to be single elimination, no draws, obviously PK shootouts to decide things if needed. And then I guess past that quarterfinal is when we could potentially see an MLS versus MLS or Liga MX versus Liga MX matchup at that point. Obviously, I think Jason making the competition maybe a little bit more even, a little bit more fair for the Liga MX sides. But I guess any high-level thoughts on the new format change for
the only thing I like am not confused by, but like it just is a little weird, is that it's like you have a table with your league, but you don't play anyone on that same table, which is just a little weird.
Why would we do anything different?
I don't know. I'm sure people won't really care, or I don't know. Maybe people will. I don't know what you've seen so far, but I feel like it's not like that big of a deal. It's just like a weird thing. Like I get why they're doing it, and I like the fact that we're gonna get pretty much every game except for potentially like 3
semifinals and
2 semifinals in the final. So it's every game is sort of league versus league, which I think is the right way to go about it. I also still think that they should get some home games, but I don't know about that. But yeah, it's just a weird like dynamic where it's like, oh, they're ahead of me, but like you could theoretically have a team play like maybe the 3 worst Liga MX teams and finish top of the table, but a team that's probably better than you might play,
That's fair. I mean, I would like to think they're trying to balance out the schedule difficulty as much as possible,
it's
right?
going
You're
to be
not.
hard to do because you don't know who's going to be great. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. No,
It's like the same thing. It's like if T Grace gets, I don't know, Atlanta's not even in it. Whoever, Cincinnati, I don't know, LAFC,
yeah.
uh,
Inter Miami.
yeah, Miami. But
There you
then, Cruz Azul gets whoever's like at the bottom. I just
Yeah,
can't think
the
of team
worst
names
three
at the
teams.
moment.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not going to be that drastic, but like it's a potential for that, which is a little weird. But
Look, when
I guess my point is
yeah,
these top 4 from each that move to the quarterfinals might not be the most deserving because of this format.
I agree with that point. And look, when these rules and everything got dropped, I'm like, why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we have the most convoluted inter-league format for a cup competition that's purely based for money? Like, why wouldn't we have this, right? Like, it is what it is. I like the fact that the opening round is only going to be MLS versus Liga MX. I think in a perfect world, you just have one giant table and then the top 8 teams advance based off that.
But it's still really hard. Like I think another problem is like you have 4 teams advancing out of 18 from both, right? So 18 MLS, 18 Liga. Through 3 games, it's gonna come down to like goal differential and stuff. Like it's really
100%.
going to matter who you play. If you draw, let's just keep saying T Grace or something, like that's a tough, or Monterey or something.
Yeah.
You're already at a disadvantage as someone
sure.
who didn't draw them.
Oh, look, this is so much bigger of you want to avoid the Cruz Azuls, the Monterreys, the Chivases, the Clubs America, and you want to get San Luis, or you want to get.
Well, that's my point. It's like we could see like a San Luis or like a Kansas City or something making it to the quarterfinal when Miami, who is much better, probably wouldn't if they had to play, let's say you had Tigres and Monterrey or something. Like,
look, that's why I think it made sense to do groups to me and then have people advance out of the groups, right? Groups are random draws, quote unquote, right? We don't know actually how random they are, but they're random draws, and people can not really argue it too much. But when you do one giant conglomerate table, it's kind of like the UEFA Champions League, right?
Well,
like
the groups was what, 2-2, 2 MLS, 2 league.
Well, it
wasn't perfect because we
wasn't even. Yeah,
but now you could do something like that and do 2-2, and it would be way more fair.
I think there's a few issues that I think arose from previous years, right? It's fixture congestion, Jesus, right? Like I think Liga MX teams and MLS teams were like, this is a lot of games we're playing. Like we're playing what, it's the 2 game, the 2 Jesus Christ, first round games, and then you get into like the super round of 32.
Well, yeah, it was the group stage, so it would have been if you make it to the final now, you play 6 games. If you make it to the final last year, you would have played, I think, 8.
Yeah, which
if I'm doing that correctly in my head, but I mean, two more is a decent amount more.
No, and I think that's why they cut down. Outside of making it fair for Liga MX, that's why they cut down on the amount of MLS teams in the tournament. That's why, sure, they're putting those teams roughly in US Open Cup. Like, I get it all. I get why they're doing it all. I just don't think there's a the cleanest way of doing all of this. Guess what? MLS, US Soccer, whoever wants to listen to this, expand the rosters, spend more money, allow organizations to play the players they want to play and prioritize the cups that they want to play in, right? Like if Sporting Kansas City wants to completely blow Leagues Cup and put all of their eggs in the US Open Cup basket because that's how they feel like they could maybe best get to CONCACAF Champions Cup next year, let them do it. Let them play their SKC2 team or whatever. It's just open up the spending. Let the rosters.
I mean, I think like just the biggest problem for me is I think this format will change, I guess, going into next
It's going
year.
to change every year.
But I think that's going to be because they're going to realize that, like, you're not going to have your best teams. If Miami ties Tigres, they might both miss, you know? Like, with 3 games in an 18-team table, you could get lucky and win all 3, or you could get unlucky and lose one and be out. Like, it's not – I guess, like, the margin of error is so tiny. I guess there are no draws, but
yeah, it's 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, whatever, but still.
Maybe that separates it a little bit, but I still think, like, you're going to have probably most of the team. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how it goes, but I think most of the teams that go through are going to have to probably win all 3 games.
At least 2, but
or the 4th seed is maybe like a win and a shootout win, but
I think
is this wait, you meant regulation loss.
Yeah, regulation loss 1 point. Yeah.
For both teams?
Well, no, sorry. Regulation.
Okay.
Regulation draw is 1 point. Whoever wins the PK shootout is 2. A loss is 0, and then a regulation.
Oh, I see. So if it goes to a shootout, both
then
teams.
Whoever wins it gets an additional point, pretty much, that they wouldn't have gotten.
Okay, so it's like regulation, shootout, loss is 1 point.
If Dallas played
Miami, or not regulation. I don't know.
And if Dallas played Miami and the regulation 90 minutes went by and it's 1-1, and then Dallas went on to go win the PK, Dallas gets 2 points, Miami gets 1.
It's like in hockey if you win in overtime.
Yes, exactly. But, it's the hockey rules here.
I mean, it makes sense. I want to see how it plays out because I don't want to say it's bad. I actually do like the idea of the leagues versus each other in pretty much every matchup. Like, they've done some good things. They've made it more fair with having an even number of teams. But I just don't – I'm a little concerned on how this format's going to go. Like, is the final going to be like everyone's like, neither of these teams are the best teams? Like,
it's a chance, but it's a spot – and there's 3 spots for Champions Cup on the line too, which is going to be fun. So the thing that I'm just looking forward to is going to be late summer. You and I talking about how Miami or Cincinnati or Atlanta or LAFC or Seattle didn't make the next round. But and I know
I'm going to come back to this conversation and say I said this.
Jason, what I'm saying is I'm so looking forward to telling you that you're right. Is what I'm saying.
It's going to be like Seattle misses the quarterfinal, and we're all going to be like, how? Like, why? Why did they have to play Monterrey and Tigres in their first 2 games?
Well, because they had to play 2 extra games in the Club World Cup, Jason. Come on. All right, let's move on. We can argue about the Leagues Cup format. It's
just funny because we're like on the same page.
You're really, Jason. You are so fucking right. It's
just like I just need it to start because I really want to see what happens. I really want to see what people react when it is a Seattle that doesn't make it, and you're like,
exactly. Or if Miami doesn't.
This isn't like a competition then of like the best teams. I don't know what we're rating now.
Before we get into the moves that have happened, I just want to kind of give a quick update on the timeline for what listeners and viewers can expect, right? Like, moving on from Leagues Cup and talking about Champions Cup at the same point. CCC 2025 has kicked off. We have seen the Liga MX teams and some other clubs from around CONCACAF start Tuesday.
That's right. Tigres is on my mind.
I was going to say, you keep on, you're like,
I keep bringing them up, and I'm like, that's because I was looking at their game from last night.
We've seen Cruz Azul beat Real Hope. We've seen Monterrey beat Forge FC so far, but Tigres, big 1-0 loss to the Nicaraguan giants, Real Estate. So, I like that trend. Let's keep that up. Let's go Nicaragua. That's what I'm rooting for right now.
But that was well, first thing you should check is where was this game played?
In the Dominican Republic, right? It's the stadium with the tree. You remember the tree from last year where Austin was playing against the team from Haiti? And then there was like everyone, like there was no one in the stands, and there was just that giant tree in the background.
Oh, I do remember.
It's the same. They're playing it in the Dominican Republic. There's like 4 games being played at the stadium. When I saw the tree like 2 nights ago, I was so pumped up.
It just like brings you back.
I was like, this is CONCACAF at its finest right now. But if you are listening today, day of episode drop, and recording schedule got a little mixed up, so that's why the episode's being dropped later on today on the 6th. We got 2 more Liga MX clubs getting into the competition here, Chivas and Pumas. So hopefully 2 more upsets on the horizon there. But Jason, we are 1 episode away. Next week's episode is going to be a conference preview. We have Champions Cup kicking off for MLS clubs on February 18th. So next week is going to be 1 conference preview. The next week after that, February 20th, is going to be the other conference preview. And then MLS kicks off February 22nd. We're less than 20 days away from MLS being back. And this is the exciting part, the fun stuff. Our preview episodes always get a ton of hits and a lot of interaction. So I'm very excited for that. And with that, I think we can slowly transition the conversation into the unbelievable moves that have happened over the last week. I kind of roughly laid this out and in the way I feel like we should talk about it, Jason, but obviously we can go out of order. This was the most difficult way to try to place things in my brain, but
wait, what are you talking about?
Like I went like, I think I'll let the listeners know.
On the first
tab. Yeah, on the first tab.
You want to go in that? Okay, not
roughly, right? Roughly, because I think there's certain things that are also just intertwined in many different ways. But I think first and foremost, we should give a little love, a little shout out to Cucho Hernandez, who's officially moving on from the Columbus Crew. He was sold to Real Betis for $16 million plus add-ons. That's a Columbus Crew record sale right there. Obviously an MLS Cup champion, a Leagues Cup champion. The dude had over 30 goal contributions, almost 40 goal contributions for Columbus last season across all competitions. I mean, an MVP, one of the best players I think we're ever going to see play in Major League Soccer, especially since MLS isn't a league where you very rarely see guys play their entire career here. He was special. He is special. I somehow hope he makes it back to MLS at some point. But I also understand that he was the one that wanted the move to La Liga and to Betis. And I get it, a chance for European UEFA Champions League, Europa League competition. So Cucho is gone from Columbus, and we'll talk about the impact on Columbus in a second. But I think Cucho just deserves a little love first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean this is like a huge move for him. Like, yeah, I mean, like you said, we'll talk about how it impacts Columbus and whatnot. Like, obviously, that's not great, but like for him. This is awesome. This is great for the league. I think the sell, like the amount of money, the amount of production and that's, I guess, kind of going into how it impacts Columbus. But like, this kind of reminds me of like when Almiron moved to Newcastle. Like, yeah. It's a little bit similar, like similar age, really was dominating the league.
It's a pretty good comparison, in all honesty.
I think Almiron was probably 25 or 24 or something. Something around there.
It was roughly the same age. Cucho is 25 for people who don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying that. But yeah, for him, I mean, this is a no-brainer. Like, if he takes that Almiron road, he might be back, you know? Maybe he's back in Columbus someday. But yeah, this is the type of move that, like, if this was an American, we would have been calling for a long time. So, but my point is, like, it makes total sense. Like, yeah. it is a perfect timing for him. While it sucks for the club, it's just good for him as a player. It's cool to see as someone who really liked watching him. It's going to be a bummer to not see him in MLS.
Yeah.
But it'll be nice to not get terrorized by him in MLS. So.
Look, he's the type of guy that if you're excluding Lionel Messi from the conversation, Cucho Hernandez was probably the best player in Major League Soccer, right? Like, I think that's arguably fair to say. I think, right, like,
I mean, every single year he was like in the conversation for MVP.
The funny thing is he only played 2.5 seasons with Columbus, right? Like, it's not like
It is interesting because when I first saw this move, I was like, is this like another? Now they're going to bring in a new guy
Yeah,
because you know how Zelarayan got sold, and we were all like, huh.
literally.
And then Cucho came in and was unbelievable. If
Yeah,
not, maybe even better than Zelarayan ever was.
I think Cucho. Well, they both won an MLS Cup, right? Like that's
Did
big.
Zelarayan win an MVP? I don't.
Nah, no, he was the best 11 guy though. So I don't know.
I mean, he was incredible, but yeah.
We're arguing apples to oranges here, but yeah.
Also, those two players netted them so much money.
Bro, the amount of on-field success, the amount of money, the amount of everything that I think what they got from Cucho and Zelarayan is unbelievable. I think we can transition to the how this impacts Columbus, and in saying that, I think we have to mention two other pretty big Columbus moves that have happened. Columbus has also sold U22 Initiative winger Marino Heinz-Stroza to Atlético Nacional down in Colombia. He was on loan with Nacional last year, where he won the Colombian First Division and a Colombian Cup. He had a ton of success, so the sale actually makes a ton of sense. And then Columbus also went on and sold striker Christian Ramirez, or not sold, sorry, transferred, traded, whatever, Christian Ramirez to the LA Galaxy. This leaves a lot of question marks for me for Columbus. And we were texting about it a little bit, Jason, but I think Wilfred Nancy has come out and said that they want to try to make some moves before the season starts, but they're in Champions Cup.
They have to.
Their season starts in, again, less than a week, whatever it is. So that means you're starting CONCACAF Champions Cup at a minimum with Diego Rossi, Jason Russell Rowe, and then some combination of like Dylan Shambost and AZ Jackson as your attacking three now. That's very different from Rossi, Christian Ramirez, and Cucho Hernandez, or whoever else you want.
I mean, they also lost so much depth.
No,
they have to make a move. This is a team. I mean, we say it every single year. If you're going to play in these competitions, and if you're going to be consistent and decent, and you want to be decent in these competitions, which, I mean, everything that we've seen at Columbus does want to be, but I mean, maybe this year they don't. I don't know. You need depth. You need depth for any of this stuff. Like at this point, where they're at currently, with the amount of games they're going to have to play, they're going to struggle in league. Like quite a bit, I think. And you get an injury or two. And like you said, they probably make some moves, but they better hit on those moves, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they're going to bring in Evander at this point.
To me, it's also right. Like, sure, Jason Russell Rowe is a big time talent when he's like 22 years old. I actually very much like Jason Russell Rowe. Maybe the hope is, okay, he's taking a next step forward. They saw enough from him last year to put that confidence in him as the 9 with Rossi there. This is a team that has no U22 initiative spots filled. This is a team that now has an open DP spot. They have $16 million in their pocket. Maybe it's a summertime DP signing to try to make a late run at an MLS.
Is that too late though? Like,
no, we've seen it with Seattle. I'm not saying you're winning Champions Cup or winning.
Seattle was like known for that kind of thing though for a while. It was like,
but what I'm saying is you still have the basis of a very good roster. I think if you looked at, if you just excluded the attack right now and you just looked at
I mean, they still have a back line and a midfield that essentially won MLS Cup.
And you still have Diego Rossi, who's won a Golden Boot in this league before. Like, I mean, so it's not like, I'm not saying Diego Rossi is not Cucho Hernandez. I don't even know if he's Lucas Zelarayan at this point.
I mean, they lost like near 40 goal contributions.
Oh, 100%.
Essentially near
50.
Cucho, well, yeah, if you include everyone, probably over 50, right? Yeah.
I mean, between Ramirez, Cucho,
Ramirez has 17 and Cucho has 49. Wait.
Heinz-Stroza had a handful.
39, yeah.
Matan.
My point, though, is like Cucho alone was essentially providing 1 goal or assist. I guess providing a goal every single game that he played. 41 games, 39 goal contributions. So without even mentioning the others, you're replacing like 40 goals.
Yeah. Columbus is going to take a step back. Obviously, I still have faith in Wilfred Nancy and his ability, I think, to maybe have a less talented roster, but have them playing at a higher level through his system. We saw it with
If
Montreal.
anyone can do it, he can do it, right? I mean,
100%.
everyone that comes into that system seems to succeed.
100%. But I will just say this. How many times have we said on this podcast over the last year and a half that there's a top 3 in the East and there's no question about it? It's Miami, it's Cincy, it's Columbus. I don't think there's a top 3 anymore after the Cucho and Ramirez sales. That's all I'm going to say. I think there's a top 2.
I mean, you think Cincy's still in that too?
Yeah,
The way
I think defensively and with the current state of the roster, Lucho is still there.
He's been acting out though. I will say, like it might be a top 3 if Lucho's gone. It might still be a top 3 because I think
100%.
Charlotte and Atlanta are right on the heels at this point.
I'm going to say Cincy's still top 2, even if Lucho goes. The only reason why I say that, one of the best defenses in all of the league.
Yeah.
And you just signed Kevin Denke, who was the record MLS transfer before. And this is how you transition like a pro, Jason. Before the Atlanta United drop from this past week, Emmanuel Latte Lath, the 26-year-old Ivory Coast striker, is coming over from Middlesbrough in the championship for a reported $22 million fee, which is an MLS transfer record plus add-ons. He's obviously going to be a DP. But Latte Lath has almost 80 career goals to his name in 265 appearances. He came up through the Napoli system, I'm pretty sure. Things didn't really work out for him in Italy from what I was reading. But then he made the move to Middlesbrough, where this season he is currently tied for 4th on goals plus assists in the championship. He has 11 goals and 3 assists for Middlesbrough in 31 games. Apparently, Premier League clubs were looking at him as well. I'm not going to speak too much into that, but Atlanta United now have their new star DP record transfer number 9 in front of the return of Miggy Almiron with Saba, with Miranchuk, with Mateus Klick coming in this offseason, and Pedro Amador still bombing in balls from the left back spot. Atlanta United got significantly better this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, this move is massive. I think he's entering his prime, like 26 years old, is probably going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
I'm terrified, man. I think he's going to terrorize the league this season. Like with this attack, with this team around it. I mean, you mentioned them all, and with Miguel Almiron coming back, like they loaded up. And I know you said even if Lucho leaves because of the defense, you still think since he's up there, but I genuinely think they'd be 4th.
That's fine. Hey, we'll talk about it during the season previews, Jason.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, Lucho better make some moves soon.
I just personally think this, right? Like, Latte Lath is a special talent. You now are going to have a lot of pressure on you. You are no matter what league in the world we're talking about, I think if someone comes into a league and you are the league record signing on the amount of money that a club has spent on you, there's going to be a lot of pressure. He has 11 goals and he's played half a season already. Now he has to go play a full season in a new league, new country, new teammates, all that fun stuff. So I was listening to Soccer Wise. Again, great content, David Goss, Tom Bogert, they do an unbelievable job. They were having the conversation about like what's the over-under on the amount of goals that Latte Lath needs to score for it to like not be a failure. I'm stuck because like Goss was saying like 15, Bogert was saying like 20. I think if you're a record signing, you got to be 20 plus at a minimum. Maybe I'm harsh. I don't know.
No. I mean, my initial thought was like 15 to not be considered a failure. 15, I would say. I think they would be disappointed if it was only 15 with that attack. With the full season. But like you said, he has 31 games played this year or like this
season. So
it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But like in the last year, in the last 12 months, right? Yeah. Probably it's 31 games. And then you're going to go right into the start and probably play 40 more. That's a lot of games. So, I mean, assuming he doesn't get injured, hopefully nothing happens.
Yeah.
I would say he should hit over 20. But I don't think I would be like, oh, he's a failure if he got 17 goals.
We're gonna go down the Inter Miami if they don't break the points record, aren't we? But no.
I mean, I just think the word failure is so harsh in some of these cases. It's like,
yeah, I think I don't recognize the impact of that word before I say it, but yes, I can understand that.
I will say though, like there's a lot of pressure. You are the highest paid, or not highest paid, but like largest transfer now. But it's not like Middlesbrough fighting for a spot in the Premier League isn't under a lot of pressure week in and week out. In that, like that might be one of the most competitive leagues in the world.
100%. And he was the 9. He was the striker for Middlesbrough. It's not.
And I pulled it up. They're in 7th. So I think that's in the. I guess it might be one spot out of the playoff. But yeah, I don't know.
This almost feels like a sense of Atlanta replicating what they had when they were their most successful. Almiron, right at the 10. You have a striker coming over from a pretty big league in the world, Josef Martinez, Emmanuel Latte Lath. Like, you have these guys. You have additional pieces in Asaba. And I'm not even going to, like, Miranchuk won Europa League with Napoli like 2 years ago. Like people forget that. Like, because he wasn't like amazing coming in for half a season into MLS, he could be an absolute baller out on the left wing, and that just makes this team even scarier. So
I mean, this team, like, I almost feel like I'm crazy. Like, this team literally was one game away from MLS Cup without, and then you add Almiron and Latte Lath. Like,
yeah.
How is that going to be worse? Like,
this team's
they
only
nailed all those signings around those two, and then now these two new signings are. I mean, Almiron, in my opinion, is like a very safe signing for them. And I'm not saying safe in a negative way. I think it's like an amazing move.
No, it's something every club should try to make.
This signing is like obviously a huge, like not a gamble, but like a huge, like a big move, but you know, you're surrounding these people, all your players, ones who you know have started to succeed in MLS in a short time, players you know have been good, you know, towards the back line and in their midfield, and then you're combining that and you're putting it all together, and you're one game away from MLS Cup last season, and you just added arguably the best player in your, well, not arguably, the best player in your history is coming back. Yeah. And then the biggest signing in MLS history, you're going to be better.
100%. Look, if Stian Gregerson can take a step forward in year 2 in MLS at center back, if you get any half decent production from Brad Guzan and Derek Williams,
I think that's the thing. It's like,
yeah,
that's like the one that, like, the Brad Guzan still in goal, even though he was great in the playoffs for most of that, it still kind of worries me. Like, there is going to be a drop off.
I guess my only thing is, right, like, let's say Brad Guzan at 40 years old really just starts completely sucking out of nowhere, because he wasn't bad last year. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad.
I mean, he was great in the playoffs. So.
He was, sure, during a hot stretch, which that can win you MLS Cup.
I mean, yeah, that's not going to happen all year.
But even if he starts sucking out of nowhere, I think that's maybe why you brought Josh Cohen in, 2 years ago when they did. Like, yes, he was playing in the Israeli First Division, and he was playing Europa League action, and he was a starting keeper and playing well there. Now he hasn't seen the field in like a year and a half, 2 years, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think Atlanta are now in the top of the East conversation. I would love another center back on that roster, but that's just me. Let's move forward. We have now seen, outside of Cucho Hernandez getting sold, Emmanuel Latte Lath coming in as a league record signing, we have now seen some history in the first ever MLS cash for player trades. The first one, the official first one, Jason, Dejan Joveljic, 25-year-old striker from the LA Galaxy, MLS Cup winning striker with the LA Galaxy, has been traded for cash to Sporting Kansas City for $4 million. He signed a new contract with SKC as well, where he will be a DP striker. Last year, he had 21 goals and 7 assists across 33 games for the Galaxy, in which obviously they won their historic 6th MLS Cup. Sporting Kansas City also went out. They signed a winger, and more importantly, no disrespect to that winger, but they brought in a DP. Manu Garcia, 27-year-old attacking midfielder from Aris in Spain. He does have, Aris in Greece. He has 1 cap for Spain. He is coming in as their new DP10. He did win the English League Cup with Manchester City back in the day. This season, he has 4 goals and 2 assists for Aris across 21 games. He's played at some pretty big clubs, and obviously getting a cap for Spain. I'm not saying 1 cap is, oh my God, this guy's a world beater, but Spain's been a pretty big powerhouse of world soccer for a while. So even getting that recognition there is pretty big for him. Jason, 2 new DPs in for Sporting Kansas City. Does that take them out of the bottom of the Western Conference, do you think?
Yeah, I think it probably takes them out of like the basement.
They're not wooden spoon anymore.
Yeah, but like I think there's still holes in this team. There's still a lot of, there's a lot of change to then suddenly work really well. Like conversely to Atlanta, like you're bringing in, people you aren't as familiar with. I think $4 million from that's what, cash for trade or whatever, cash for player deal. Like I think that's really cool. It went into action that quickly. Dejan Joveljic is obviously really good, but somewhat would concern me that whole team was incredible, and the Galaxy, and this isn't like, it's not like a slight on him. It's more like if I'm managing Kansas City, I would really take a long look and see like how much of that was created by Puig, how much was that created by all of those players, Peck and Paintsill. Like we mentioned all of those guys, they all had 15-goal seasons. I think off the top of my head, they were all at least close, maybe even more. Some even more. So while I think it's like a good move, it does concern me a little bit of how quickly can he form a similar partnership with the rest of the team, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
No, look,
you don't have Puig behind you, so it's a lot harder.
The thing is, and I forgot to add one of the players into our depth chart here. I forgot to add Manu Garcia, so that's on me there. But
yeah, I was where is he?
He's missing. Look, I still think so. You have Manu Garcia, who I'm sure they're hoping that he kind of comes in, hits the ground running. Yeah, Daniel Shalhoub, no disrespect to him, is not a DP level winger at this point. I get. He's been around for a while. He knows the league. And Steven Afrifa kind of broke onto the scene and got a few caps with Canada last year, which is pretty cool. I think there's enough there where Dejan Joveljic is still going to get the opportunities to score. The difference is now this almost feels like his team, and it's not, right? Like this isn't.
And it's a lot harder to have like your leader or whatever as just your number 9. Like I don't mean it just your number 9. But like you see all these really good MLS teams. You have Cucho, you have Lucho, you have I don't know off the top of my head, but you have all these really good attacking mids. Miguel Almiron now, but like they have a little bit more control. Where I feel like Joveljic isn't going to have as much control over like what happens behind him as much.
Look, Manu Garcia could come in and be a baller. We just don't know.
Yeah, he could be their Ricky Puig. Like, obviously that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping to kind of hit that. But I think from where this team was to where they are, like they did get better, obviously, but they're not. They were so low that it's going to be hard to like suddenly be competing.
It's one of those things where I don't want to spend too much more time on it. I think it's an improvement to the roster, but do I still think this roster has plenty of more holes, especially across that back line where it's drastically changing how I think they're going to finish?
Yeah,
not really. And I think that's where the story of these moves are. They need center backs. They need a right back. If Jake Davis is going to play in the midfield, if Jake Davis is playing right back, okay, then fine. You have him there. But there's a lot of questions still that I have.
I will add, for the Galaxy at least, like the Joveljic move makes a lot more sense with the context of the Christian Ramirez move, because they basically cut probably a few million from that, actually gained money, and then are getting like an okay return. Like, I think Christian Ramirez is a good striker. I don't think he's at Jovljic's level, but I think with that team around him, like that's where you kind of go in and you go, okay, can you just finish, because you're going to get good service.
I think that's fair to bring up, and I mentioned Christian Ramirez in the trade before with Columbus. Let's talk about Ramirez now, and all in context with the LA Galaxy. So the reason why the Galaxy had to trade Joveljic was because salary cap league. Joveljic aged out of the U22 initiative, and his salary is quite large, so they had to move on. And they got a good amount of cash for him. And to replace that, yes, they brought in Christian Ramirez from Columbus, who's a 33-year-old striker. He's been around the league. We've seen him thrive and do very well with Columbus over the last 2-ish years. Do I think he could come in and have some semblance of success? Maybe 10 goals under Greg Vanney? 100%, especially with Paintsill and Peck and Marco Royce there kind of, distributing things out. I think that there's an obvious path for him to have his success there. The thing to me, and I think Matt Doyle has hinted at it, and it makes the most sense, there's still room for another U22 initiative striker to come in that I think would probably split the minutes with Christian Ramirez in 2025.
And that's what I was going to say, because I don't think Christian Ramirez is going to play every game 90 minutes. Like, I just don't see that happening. He didn't do that for Columbus. They had kind of like a little bit stronger backing, I'd say. But I think definitely there's need for one, if not two players to kind of operate behind him.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is no disrespect to Miguel Berry, but I don't know if he's even a guy, if you just threw into the middle list attack, if he's getting close to 10. I just don't think that's happening. And that's the kind of the number that I roughly have in my head, right? Because if Peck gets you another 20 goal contributions, if Paintsill can up his number to like 20-ish again.
I mean, I think all these players are going to slightly regress without Ricky Puig. But
maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe
Marco. I mean, I personally think so. I think they are due for like maybe a slighter, less crazy amount of goal scoring season. But
I mean, Joveljic helps that those players be better. Puig helps those players be better. I think Marco Royce, I think you still get enough is what I'm saying between, let's just say, a combination of like those next guys of Royce, Diego Fagundes, Christian Ramirez, that still elevates you to a level where I can still see you competing for MLS Cup.
Yeah, I don't know if I can see them necessarily competing for Supporter Shield, though. I guess they weren't really competing for Supporter Shield anyways last year.
Nobody was.
But like the one seed in the conference, I think is going to be out of reach for them.
I agree, but I think
but they fall probably in that 3 to 5 range.
100%, and I still think that puts you in prime contention to win MLS Cup.
Yeah, I think like home playoff game is sort of like that's where I see them.
Yeah, that's 100% fair. And then if they bring in a U22 striker and they hit the ground running a little bit, that has me even more excited for them.
Because you're getting Puig back, and hopefully he's just gonna slot right back in, right?
Hopefully they're getting Puig back. I think that's just they're banking on him coming back late season. Let's move forward to another Western Conference team and the second cash for player trade that we saw this past week. Jack McGlynn, not the name that I thought would have been bouncing around for this cash for player trades.
This one had me shocked. I think
you texted me about it.
Yeah, I was like, what?
So Jack McGlynn, 21-year-old USMNT central midfielder, traded from the Philadelphia Union to the Houston Dynamo for $2.1 million. plus a potential of 1.3 million in add-ons, and the Union still retain a sell-on percentage. Funny little MLS thing about that, because Jack McGlynn was in the Red Bull and New York City FC's territory, if McGlynn gets sold outside of MLS, New York City and Red Bulls each get 20% of the sell-on fee. So that's fun.
That is insane.
So Jack McGlynn, 135 career appearances for the Union, 18 goals and 8 goals and 16 assists. Last year he had 12 goal contributions in total, about 39 games for Philly, which is, I think, in junction to say he wasn't even at his best last year. And I said this to you in text message. Jack McGlynn's skill set was not made for the Philadelphia Union. He is not this pressing type of midfielder. He's the type of guy who's going to receive the ball, kind of maintain that possession, and try to break some lines, break some defenders with a very good pass, right? He's not the guy that's running up and down the field, pressing. That's not his game. But I think that's Houston Dynamo's game. That's Ben Olsen's game. And I love the fit of Jack McGlynn in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Houston, this is a no-brainer. Even though it is a lot of money, plus, for some reason, I thought I heard the sell-on fee was like 50% or something. Like, I'm pretty sure it's like a high sell-on fee.
That's
don't quote me on that, because I tried to look it up and I couldn't find where I saw that. But
Jason just throwing out facts. Okay.
No. But either way, like, there's a lot of money plus the sell-on fee, which theoretically, like, in my mind, he's going to Europe or somewhere in probably 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
If not sooner. Like,
I was going to say a year or two, but yeah.
Yeah.
Reports I'm seeing are 50%, though, by the way. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just telling you.
What did you say?
Said reports that I am seeing are 50%.
Yeah, so when I saw that, I was like, I like the move for Houston. I think it does fill like that Ache hole a little bit. Like, they really needed that. It does kind of worry me. Like, if he's gone in a year, and you're basically not going to get that. Like, you spent a lot on him, and you have to give a lot of the next transfer away. So unless it's like a $15 to $20 million transfer, like, I'm not feeling that confident in, like, or if they win MLS Cup, like, how successful can this move be, I guess?
Right. So let's just say the incentives get hit. You're invested in a total of about $3 million on McGlynn. You're giving up 50% of the transfer. So that means you have to, at minimum, sell him for $6 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're banking a lot in McGlynn elevating to a next level this year. And personally, what I'll say is I think he can in Houston.
I definitely agree. And I think, like, he has the quality. I mean, we saw him with the US. Like, he's going to be looked at. Like, there's a very good chance he's sold for 10+ million. It's just a little risky because you might only get him, like, it's kind of like a rental.
I think you're banking that this is your win now window, and in the next 24 to 48 months you're winning a trophy, and Jack McGlynn's a big part of the reason why. That's what I think Houston is doing with a move like this. And you're banking that the U22 guys that you've brought in over the last year to 2 years that have had some injury concerns come back, they're elevated, and this is the winning formula. That's what it seems like to me. But
hey, I'm all for, like, an MLS team pretty much going all in for, like, the next year or two. I like that. I think
Houston's all in, though.
Yeah, but there's too many MLS teams that are content just being garbage.
That's fair. That's fine.
So I respect the effort.
I will give that to you. Anything else on Houston before we kind of run through some of these smaller moves?
No.
And I'm not saying smaller moves and they're less important, but I think we hit probably the biggest ones there. But Stuart Armstrong, the Vancouver Whitecaps, have transferred him to Sheffield Wednesday in the EFL Championship. Anytime I read Sheffield Wednesday, I just think of the Ted Lasso joke of, we're playing Sheffield Wednesday Saturday. There's Sheffield Saturday. That's just a fun joke.
I just think of like that blue owl.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic logo.
Yeah.
32-year-old attacking midfielder, right? We barely knew him. He had 4 goal contributions in 11 games for the Whitecaps. He played really well. I will say that. There's not a shot at the quality, but now leaves a DP spot open for the Whitecaps. I just think this is another hit at the Whitecaps roster, and I'm looking at it, and I don't hate it. I'm not confident in it. I don't know if you have anything you want to say on Whitecaps.
I mean, I actually I like the Whitecaps roster a little bit. I don't think it's like league winning or anything, or trophy winning, but it's a competitive team. Like if I was rooting for them, I'd be excited, right?
I think they are going to compete for a road spot in the playoffs.
I also think watching Brian White and Ryan Gauld is really fun. So
Ryan Gauld elevates it all, right? Like if they don't have Gauld, this team, no offense to them, is not very good.
Also, if they get maybe they make a DP signing, maybe it's in the summer, and if they hit on that, this team isn't that far from being a very competitive playoff team.
No, I just think with what we know with where the state of the Whitecaps are right now, with the with the ownership trying to sell.
Well, I mean, that's like the dark cloud over everything, which is super disappointing.
But that's what I'm saying is I don't know how much of an investment is going to go into this.
Yeah. If you're trying to sell the team, are you about to spend $20 million on it?
Exactly. So we're selling you this team, and you have to pay this guy a shit ton of money.
You have to pay him $6 million a year. So
on top of probably what they're already paying Ryan Gauld, right? So I'm just saying I have my hesitations about the Whitecaps.
Give more money to Takaoka.
That's Jason's guy. Always has been. I'm going to run through some of these down here really quick, Jason. FC Cincinnati, they signed a U22 Initiative center back Gilberto Flores from Libertad down in Paraguay. He's had a ton of success down in Paraguay. Very young dude, right? He's 21 years old. He's not going to be starting, but I think you're adding in a U22 Initiative center back to go along with the center back core that this team has. Just great depth, one for the future. That's all I'm going to say there, unless you have anything you want to add to that.
No.
It's totally fine. The other one that I'm just going to quickly roll through, New York City FC update. Jovan Mijatovic has loaned 19-year-old Serbian youth international striker I just messed up that sentence. New York City has loaned Jovan Mijatovic, who is that 19-year-old.
Is that not what you said?
I think I threw in another word.
I don't know. It went over my head, honestly.
They loaned the very talented young Serbian kid to Belgian, the Belgian First Division. He was a U22 Initiative player. I'm pretty sure he's still going to eat up a U22 Initiative spot on the roster, but he had a goal in 15 appearances last year for New York City. He's had a little bit of a messy offseason. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but go on Google and you'll find some articles about him. Let's just see. Let's go to Inter Miami, Jason. Inter Miami have made two moves. One, they've sold Facundo Farias, the former Argentine youth international, to Estudiantes down in Argentina. Obviously, Farias missed all of last season when he got injured in the preseason, but he did have 5 goal contributions in 13 games for Miami in 2023. Personally, I thought with Diego Gomez and that sale to Brighton, I thought Farias was going to come in and be the next young big talent for them, but he's gone to Estudiantes. And Miami has also signed a center back, Maxi Falcon, from Colo Colo down in Chile. He won a bunch down in Chile with Colo Colo. Obviously, they're one of the best teams down there. Last season, he had 3 goals in 41 games for the Chilean Giants. Jason, Farias, Falcon, Miami, you can take that wherever you want to take that.
I mean, I think Miami is I don't know. They're just kind of at this point filling in around the edges. I'm not that upset Facundo Farias didn't end up being amazing for them.
If he was on any other MLS roster, I'd be like, that's a big time.
True. But they brought in Allende.
Yeah.
He's kind of filling in that spot. I guess a little bit.
You still and you brought in Fafa Picoult. You still have Robert Taylor. Yeah. Guess what? You still have Lionel Messi.
Yeah. So I think their loss of Farias isn't really a loss at all. I don't know, maybe what they're paying Allende is maybe higher or lower. I really don't know. It might be that kind of move.
We'll see the salaries soon.
I like bringing in more center back depth and center back help. I think that is definitely the Maxi Falcon move. Getting a guy who has nearly 200 games played is it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but like where you play, if you have 200 games anywhere, you're probably pretty experienced and you've seen a lot of stuff. So like I like that he's coming in. He's going to be able to probably go right into that defense and help them quite a bit. And it's not like this is like a horrible defending team, but obviously most of the money is in the attack. Well, I mean, it makes sense. You're literally paying like.
To me, the reason why this team did not win MLS Cup in 2024 or Champions Cup in 2024 or Leagues Cup in 2024 is because they were a bad team defensively. They had to shove Sergio Busquets into a center back role next to Aviles until David Martinez came in, and they made like 3 center back signings on loan from South America. And moving on from a winger to bring in a center back just makes sense.
This is like just what happens when you're paying 3, 4, 5 guys all your money, basically, and they're pretty much all in the attacking side of the field.
Fair.
Fair. Also messy, so I don't know. Like I like Drake Callender. I think he's a solid goalie. I think if he can kind of have a good season, I don't know. This is one of those teams that I don't think they're that concerned. Like you might be right. I think you're right. Like they probably didn't win those trophies because it's not because of the offensive production. Like that's kind of a clear, but I don't think necessarily it's like a horrible defense. I think there's worse defenses in MLS for sure.
No, 100% there is. I'm just saying if you want to be at the level where Miami, I think, wants to be, you needed to give up some of those higher salaries, which they have this offseason, right? Mati Rojas, Kristav, Campagna, Farias, even Diego Gomez, right? And you replace that maybe with a little bit less quality in the attack, but you're bringing in the positions of need. You've upgraded at right back, you've upgraded at center back, and you've added depth across the line still. So I think this is where Miami, we haven't even really talked about them a bunch this offseason. They're going to be very good, but
because they didn't really have to change all that much.
100%. And
I think you're right though. Like where they like the defense, if they're going to bring people in, it should be there.
Exactly, right. And I get it. You still need to make those signings in the attack and the midfield, but the center back, I think Toto Aviles, I think he's a very young, talented center back. I think he can be a nice rotational center back right now, but if it's Maxi Falcon and David Martinez, I think that's the pair that probably wins you more games in the against the better quality teams of CONCACAF. Is what I'll leave that at there. I think Aviles can hit that point, but let's go to the other team down in Florida, Orlando City. They've signed their DP winger replacement for Facundo Torres in Marko Pasalic. The Croatian international is coming over from HNK Rijeka in Croatia. He will be a DP. This season for Rijeka, he has 7 goals and 4 assists in 27 games played. I think he came up in the Borussia Dortmund system, only got a handful of appearances with them, but played a ton of his career for Dortmund too. So he hasn't, at 24, he doesn't have the most career first team, games played, but he has had a lot of success in recent history. And I think a lot of people in Europe know who he is and are really liking him. And he was with the Croatian national team at last summer's Euros. So he's good enough at that level for Croatia, who are a pretty damn good international team. So I like the move. I can't sit here and say I know that much about him on the field and how he's going to be different than Facundo Torres or the same or whatever, but I like the profile and what I've heard about him.
I kind of feel like this move should have been higher on the list, Tom. But
yeah, this was just the point of I wasn't moving that many.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was like, it's a pretty important move. And like you said, I don't want to call it like a replacement move because it makes it sound like not that good of a move, but it is kind of like this.
He is replacing a player.
This is what we lost. Now we need to fill one of the better players from our roster that's gone. And like that's a tough ask, especially in like the first season. I think the team around him like is pretty consistent. I don't feel like they turn over like a crazy amount every season. So that kind of makes it easier, I think, to go into a team that kind of knows each other. It's going to be, I don't know. I don't really know what to say. I think it could be a good move. Like you said, we don't really know a whole lot about him. I would hope he can produce because he's going to have to. Like if he doesn't, it's going to be pretty clear really quick, and Orlando needs that. But
if Martin Ojeda can produce at the level he was at the 10, because right, like before this move, I kind of slotted him back out at the wing because he was the next best player type of deal, right? Yeah. If Ojeda's bumped back to the 10 and you have Pasalic who can be, I would say any level of quality around what Facundo Torres was, and Duncan McGuire can bounce back from the sophomore slump, and you get maybe a little bit more from Luis Muriel, and Ramiro Enrique can do exactly what he did last year. Orlando's back in the same spot that they're in, 4th, 3rd, 5th, whatever, around that mark in the Eastern Conference. Wilder Cartagena, he is out for a few months. That came out recently, so that's going to suck for their midfield, but apparently they're very close to signing Edward Atuesta, so that would be a nice little replacement there. I don't know.
I mean, that would be a huge replacement.
Their defense is good. I still like Orlando City a lot. I just don't like them enough to bump them into the top tier. And I think some teams that were under them last year are catching up to them. So I think
I think there's teams that were under them that are now better than them.
100. I mean, shout out Atlanta United, but
and Charlotte, honestly.
Fair.
Both of those teams are definitely better than this team now. So it's not like anything that it's more of like I wouldn't. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like I wouldn't blame it on Orlando for like. I don't think they got much worse, if at all. I just think other teams got a lot better.
Yeah, exactly.
Which hurts them.
Exactly. And maybe one of those teams we can transition over into the New York Red Bulls. They've made 2 moves, and Jason, this was this morning, the 6th. So they've added to their back line this morning. First, they signed free agent center back Tim Parker. They bring him back to the Red Bulls, which, I'm not a Red Bull fan, but I'm a Tim Parker guy. He's a Long Islander. It's cool seeing him go back home to a place he played almost 100 games at in his career. But the 31-year-old USMNT international has won a supporter shield. He won it with the Red Bulls. Has won a Canadian championship in his career. Last year, he played 30 games across his time with New England and St. Louis. Obviously he's on a bit of a higher salary there, so that's maybe a concern, but we will see when those salary numbers get dropped. And then the Red Bulls also signed 21-year-old Chilean international left back Marcelo Morales from Universidad de Chile. He won the Chilean Cup with them, and for 21 years old, he has over 100 games played in his career. Seems definitely like more of a wingback type player, someone who can distribute a little bit and put in a nice cross. He has 16 assists in his career. He has 4 assists last season for Universidad de Chile. Seems like potentially a nice little replacement for John Tolkien, and they also added Raheem Edwards as well via free agency. So Red Bulls are quiet, not quietly, maybe just in my brain, I'm hoping it's quietly because I don't like them that much, but they're getting much better.
It's definitely quietly because, like, in my mind, I don't think of the Red Bulls when I think of like the top 4 to 5 teams in the East, like, which is weird because where they just were, and they arguably have, I don't know, Emil Forsberg is one of the top 10 players in the league, maybe.
That's a whole question, 15? Jason. I don't know. 15 definitely. I don't know if I'd say 10, but sure.
I was just saying a number. He's definitely up there, but like, yes. I don't know. This team, like the Marcelo Morales move is a John Tolkien. We need
that is a replacement, right? That is a replacement.
Hopefully, 21 years old. The Rebels are good at molding players, so hopefully they can kind of do the same thing, and I think potentially they can. but we'll just kind of have to see.
He's
not going to produce like Tolkien. Like I mean, I guess he might, but
he has 2 caps for Chile already. I'm not saying Chile are like, oh my god, but it's not bad. To me, it just seems like the Red Bulls are like too deep at every position, which is obviously great for them. I think maybe the argument of too deep isn't there if some of these youth players don't completely elevate to another level. Like I think in 2025, like Serge Goma, obviously the kid that they brought in from the Polish second division, Victor Bogash, Julian Hall, Wiki Carmona, Noah Isla, even. I think those guys need to take a step forward if the Red Bulls are back in the MLS Cup conversation. If they don't, then that depth isn't there, and I think then you're talking about them. Sure,
but even if 3 of them or 2 of them really hit,
for sure,
it's massive.
I just think, to me, and again, I'm a New York City fan, everyone. If you're not watching and you don't see the New York City stuff in the background, take that for what it is. I still don't think the Red Bulls have left the 5th to 8th conversation in the Eastern.
Oh, I mean, definitely not. Like,
okay,
8th gets pretty bad, dude. Like, 8th is like, ooh, like, what are these teams doing? And I can say that because my team is perennially there, lower, much lower.
I was gonna say your team's in the. We're not even talking about what are they doing because we know.
But wait, hey, season off season, man.
All right, let's finish up with the last 3 moves. 2 of them are Minnesota.
Saving the one I keep thinking you're doing next.
I'm so sorry. Do you want to talk about Ted Ku-Dipietro?
Well, we'll finish with that one at this point.
Right.
And I thought you were going to do that one next, like probably 4 or 5 moves ago.
I have a reason why, and I'll get to it when we get to it. But let's start with Minnesota United. So Minnesota United have added 2 players. One U22 Initiative center back in Nicolas Romero from Atletico Tucumán. The 21-year-old center back had 38 games played for Tucumán last year. Typically, I like to think of U22 players as one for the future, but he honestly could be a guy who steps into somewhat of a regular playing role for Minnesota in 2025, especially if they stick with the back 3, but we'll see.
I mean, last season he played 38 games.
That's what I'm saying is like
a lot of games.
It's not like, the Gilberto Flores for Cincinnati, who, I think he played a little bit for Libertad, but he wasn't regular. Like this kid seems like a regular, but
I mean, yeah, like if it was 15 games, either he made mistakes or something happened where he was in and out of the lineup. He wasn't 38 games is like he was on that roster every single game pretty much.
Exactly. And again, I'm not saying this Romero is going to be a starter for this team, but he could be a guy who sees regular minutes, which is probably good for a team that plays a back 3. And then the other addition is Hoyan Jung, the 24-year-old South Korean international central midfielder. Minnesota signed him for a reported $1 million from Gwangju FC in South Korea. He did win. He has a K-League 2, so a Korean second division title to his career. But he had 7 assists in 42 games played for Gwangju FC last year. Definitely more of a. He seems like a central midfielder that sits back and passes from the stuff that I've watched on YouTube of him. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert on him, but Minnesota, I like them a lot.
I will say, I will sit here and definitely say I trust Eric Ramsey at this point to find and work with the players he wants to work with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this team is a good team.
Yeah. I mean, look,
I don't really have that much more to add. I think I don't know if these moves are going to be amazing, but I think they probably make them a little bit better.
I will say between Kelvin Yeboah, Joaquin Pereira, who else did they bring in the last little bit? Jefferson Diaz, right? Like these guys that they brought in underneath this brand new front office and head coach that hasn't really. Now they've had the time, I think, to get functioning, but last year it was a little bit pieced together.
He came in a week before. He also got a ton out of Tani Oluwaseyi.
Exactly. So
he gets a lot out of his players. They finished 6th last season. Yeah. I think maybe they finished around there, at their best, right? Could they be the 4th seed?
I will just say I might have Minnesota up in the top 3 conversation. That's just where I'm at. I think
do like that.
Kelvin Yeboah, sneaky MVP conversation.
Honestly, when you look at the Western Conference,
it's not that good.
Yeah, no, I have such a different reaction than when I look at the Eastern Conference, because I look at the West and I'm like, no, I agree with you. Like, even just saying like, oh, I think they could definitely be like not definitely, but like be a. Then I look at it and I'm like, well, you might be right, honestly.
Can I say I think Minnesota's top 3 in the East too if we bump them over there for shits and giggles? I like Minnesota.
I would have a much harder time saying that. I think I could argue 4th or 5th.
Yeah, it's
I personally am very high on Charlotte and Atlanta. Obviously, I think Miami is still Miami.
And Cincinnati's still good.
Cincinnati's still good. I'm not like totally out on Columbus, but I mean, they're going to drop.
What about New York City, Jason? Come on. Give me a little
the Red Bulls, yeah, they got, I think they'll still be in. Yeah, NYCFC needs to start. I don't know. They haven't done like anything.
No. New York City does this thing.
That's the problem.
They do this thing where they forget that they play inside of MLS that has roster mechanisms, and then they just wait a week before the season and then somehow add 3 players from some CFP.
Honestly, like for New York City, I feel like, not to be harsh, but like they're a playing team maybe.
At this point,
with other teams getting better around them, like, yeah, they're probably. I mean, the bottom of the East is so bad too,
it's
though.
Not because it's not.
You start looking at it and you're like, well, I mean, I guess are they worse than Montreal is? I don't know.
They're
definitely worse than Atlanta. Are they worse than DC this year? Probably not.
No.
Toronto, no.
New York City is
Philly,
still
no. New England, no. Nashville,
the thing with
no.
New York City is this, Jason, is they put a lot of investment. They spent $20 million last year, right? They need a lot of that investment to now develop and pay off into 2025. That's what New York City's at, 100%.
I will say, looking at this Eastern Conference, not to change the subject really that much, but I'm looking at where Chicago finished, and I'm like, if we don't finish in a play-in spot, I am going to be so disappointed. Like the 5 to 6 teams, not including Atlanta, that finished directly above us, are not really better.
Yeah, I mean,
at all. Some might have gotten worse.
This is getting into optimistic Jason territory about his Chicago Fire, and I'm here.
It's less optimistic though, and more like, if we finish in like 12th or lower this season, I don't know what they can do over there. Like, they might as well just sell. Like, at that point, look at the teams. I don't want to. I'm canceling out of this last year's standings. I
getting so angry. Jason, the Fire are going to be good. Don't you worry.
I canceled out. I don't even care. I'm not thinking about it till week 7.
I'm going to finish the episode off with this, Jason. And the reason why I saved Ted Ku-Dipietro for last was because this has been heavily reported by Tom Bogert, not been official by any club at this point. So I was kind of hoping we could stall it off and it'd become official and we could talk about it. But I'm going to go with Tom Bogert's word here, folks. And the Ted Ku-Dipietro is the 3rd player used in the cash for trade mechanism in MLS history. The 23-year-old.
This isn't like official?
No, it's not.
Oh my God. I totally thought it was.
He reported it last week, and that's why I was like, oh, it's going to be official by the time we record. It's not. So sorry, Ted. We'll talk about you more next week too if this becomes official.
It honestly seems like one of the easiest things to become official. It's inter-MLS trade for cash.
Right. It's a little, so the fee's a little over $1 million plus add-ons and stuff like that. He's a former U.S. Youth International, traded from DC to the Colorado Rapids. Probably should have mentioned that much sooner. But I think Colorado has a brand new winger on their hands, like starting.
Dude, I really like this move, honestly. Like, when I first read it, I was like, first of all, classic Colorado move. Just someone from a different MLS team.
That shows a little bit of promise.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's shown a decent amount of promise
No,
on like
Ted,
some
he's a
pretty
very
bad
good
DC
player.
United teams.
He's a very good player. I like Ted Ku-Dipietro a lot. I don't know if it's Ted. I don't know if it's Teddy. I don't know if it's Theodore. There's one of them that he prefers, and off the top of my head, I am so sorry, Mr. Ku-Dipietro. I
Maybe he'll
don't.
come on the pod.
Yeah, maybe. Please correct me, or I can.
I like this attack though. Adding him to Navarro, Darren Yappy,
Yep.
Mihalovic, obviously. Like this is a pretty solid team. A pretty like we knew they were good, and then they just absolutely fell apart. So if they can just not fall apart, they're probably in good shape.
Colorado's gotten better. I have my concerns, and we will talk about it when we preview the
Well,
Western.
and again, the Western Conference is not that scary.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I said. Like, we'll hold off on it for a little bit, Jason. We've done an hour and 15. We're good for this week. Next week, folks, you will get Jason pick a conference.
Let's do the West.
Well, next week you
because
will get.
I really need the Lucho news to come out before before we get it.
Next week, you guys will get your Western Conference preview because that's what Jason wants. And the week after that, leading into MLS Cup, you'll get your Eastern Conference preview, some picks, predictions, all that stuff. And MLS is here, Jason. So thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure. Please rate, review, subscribe if you listened, watch, whatever it may be. And we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.